Excellent. Good. We're going to get cracking. So welcome to New Tax Year Resolutions, Nailing Your Practice Strategy. I'm Tony Stevenson. I'm sure a few of you are familiar with my face, having listened to a few of these webinars before. Thanks for joining us today. We have got Will Farnell and Nick Hayward-Ferreter on with us, and they shall introduce themselves shortly after I've been through a few bits of housekeeping and getting us cracking. So, right, agenda for today. So a bit of housekeeping, so just covering all the bits and pieces that we need to get covered in order to make sure that everyone's got all the information that they need in order to be able to listen comfortably. I'm going to go through a little scene set, nothing too strenuous, just a little bit of context as to what we're talking about today, why we're talking about it, and why it's important, and hopefully what you'll get from the webinar. Then we'll jump into the meat of the session, which will be myself, Nick, and Will going through a live panel discussion. We've got 4 or 5 questions to pose around sort of setting your practice strategy and the new tax year, and and why is this good time to do it, and what sort of technology we'll perhaps be employing in order to make sure that we've got this correct. There'll be an opportunity for some Q&A at the end, and also sort of while we go through. And then for anybody that is interested in seeing a bit more of FreeAgent, the actual product itself, if you would like to stick around at the end, we do a sort of 10-15 minute demo at the end of the webinar, because we have folk on this webinar who are already existing FreeAgent partners, but we'll also have people on this webinar who aren't existing FreeAgent partners and therefore might wish to have a look at FreeAgent, see what it's all about. There'll be plenty of opportunity for you to say, yes, do you know what, I'm interested in having a chat with somebody from FreeAgent about how it might be able to help my practice. So, housekeeping. Today's session will be recorded. This will be the first webinar that I've ever delivered where that doesn't get asked somewhere in the questions or the chat at some point. We know we have people that join us after the start and people that drop off before the end, so don't worry, you will get the session in the follow-up email, along with some other bits and pieces and the link to claim your CPD. If you've got any questions, so you'll notice as you sort of hover over, there'll be a chat function, which we've got everybody has fired in all their locations this morning, which is really great. If you want to ask sort of us a specific question, something about FreeAgent, something about the session, if you want to ask one of the panelists, where'd you get in touch with them, or whatever that might be, please put it in the Q&A rather than in the chat, because if you put it in the chat, it just kind of gets lost in in all the chat as we move through the webinar. You are more than welcome to sort of chat amongst yourselves and and put your thoughts and comments in there if you agree with something. If you don't, that's absolutely fine. We have the need, unfortunately, for a polite and respectful policy. The reason for that is on very rare occasions in the past, we have had a couple of unruly individuals who thought that it was appropriate to sort of throw proverbial rocks at the subject matter, which in that case was in fact MTD. But we are all here to learn. We are all here to get plenty out of it, and I liken it to being in the cinema. If you're sat next to somebody who's shouting at the screen, it kind of ruins your enjoyment. So just try and be positive and respectful, and in the way that you conduct yourself, because if you don't, we can kick you out, and I don't want to do that. We're on an accounting technology webinar. It's not necessary. We will have some polls run through the session. So there'll be a sort of interest poll, which will give us an opportunity to kind of pick your brains on a particular topic. And then there'll be 3 opportunities for you to say, yes, I'd really like somebody from FreeAgent to get in touch, because we know that there will be a few people on this webinar, as there always is, that thinks, actually, that sounds like a really good bit of kit, really like what they're saying, and I'd like somebody to follow up with me. So yeah, if you could participate in the polls, that would be much appreciated, and they will run sort of throughout the webinar. And then, as I said, at the end, we will have a FreeAgent demo, so you're welcome to stick around if you would like to. If you don't, because you already know FreeAgent well, then you're welcome to drop off, but I would urge you to do so. Even those that have seen FreeAgent before often get plenty from it. So without further ado, There we go. So we are CPD accredited. So over the course of the last couple of years, we've basically CPD accredited everything that we possibly could at FreeAgent. So all the webinars are CPD accredited. You'll get a point for today because it's an hour's worth of content. You'll get a link through in the email after the session to say, click here. Yes, I attended today's session, and I'd like to claim my certificate, please. And then it just gets emailed out to you, which is great. Worth mentioning as well, sort of all of our accreditation modules are all CPD accredited. Our roadshows that are coming up in a couple of weeks, they're CPD accredited as well. So you'll be able to kind of put all that stuff towards your CPD requirements for the year for your respective providers. Presenter, me. So about myself. So I'm Tony Stevenson. I am a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants for England and Wales. I am the Senior Digital Enablement Manager here at FreeAgent. So that means that I get involved in a whole bunch of go-to-market stuff in and around our sales team. So I'm concerned with sort of thought leadership. You'll often see me mucking around on LinkedIn, presenting webinars, talking on stages, that kind of stuff. I sort of act as the conduit for practice knowledge into our wider business, I guess. And then also I'm heavily involved in the practice integration side of things as well. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you're more than welcome to. I'm just shy of 12,000 connections now, and that's my next goal. So yeah, my background, I've worked in the cloud accounting industry now for about 10 years, worked at Xero for a couple of years, and I've been at FreeAgent now for just under 6 years. And prior to that, I spent about 10 years sort of bouncing around practice and industry, never quite finding my spiritual home. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Will Farnell, our esteemed guest, to do a brief introduction for himself. Yeah, over to you, Will.
Excellent. Thanks, Tony. Good afternoon, everybody. Those that don't know me, my name's Will Farnell. I wear a number of hats, but fundamentally, number one is I set up an accountancy firm in Norwich in Norfolk in 2007, named Farnell Clark. We were very early adopters of technology, still unchallenged yet when I say we were the first 100% cloud practice globally back in 2009. So we've kind of lived and breathed tech. We tried many products before most firms used them, and found the best way to optimize and use technology in our practice. The use of technology and various other things that we did meant that we've grown very quickly. We're a team of 75 people now, so we've generally doubled in size every 3 years over the kind of last 17 years that we've been trading as a firm. And I've written a couple of books. First one was The Digital Firm in 2018, and last year the second book, The Human Firm, was published. Thank you very much indeed, Tony, for the plug there.
Got it right there. Read it a couple of times, mate.
I spend a lot of my time working with accountants and bookkeepers, helping them understand how to grow, how to scale, how to deploy technology, delivering better client experience, and so on. So hopefully I can share some items of wisdom and nuggets during the session today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Will. Nick, over to you.
Hello, thanks.
Your intros, please, mate.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Nick Heward-Ferreter. I'm the digital accounting specialist at Wright Vigar, a ICAEW firm in the East Midlands, based mainly between Lincoln and Nottingham. And it is my job to deal with anything that touches cloud-based technology at our firm. So responsible for vision, sourcing, training, whether it's internal with the colleagues, external, like leading our plans, practices, anything like that. If it's in the cloud, I get my fingers on it, basically. So I've been there over 10 years now, when I started out training and just basically decided that I really didn't like working too hard, and there was products out there to make life easier, and just got into that, really. So yeah, that's me.
Fabulous, thank you. I'm really looking forward to getting into this with both of you gentlemen, because I think that you'll both bring a unique perspective from slightly different seats on the topic that we're going to be discussing today. But before we do that, we've got a little bit more of me chatting. So thank you very much. I will jump back in. So the first poll. So as I promised, we know that there are people that will drop off early. Please, if you are an accountant or bookkeeper in practice and you would like some more information about becoming a FreeAgent partner, then drop a yes in there, and we will be in touch with you. We'll run this for about a minute or so, And I'd really appreciate it if you could participate, because it does makes our life easier, and we just want to make sure that everybody who is here today, who came with the intention of perhaps having a chat with us, we make that process as seamless as possible. It's really nice to see there. We've got plenty of free agent partners saying, yeah, and I'd really like to hear from my account manager, because we know that I'm sure that you love your account manager at free agent, because they're
Bit unfair that I can't vote in this as a participant. I just want to hang out with Mike. Mike's great.
Mike is great. Mike is great. I love Mike. He's a very, very interesting guy with lots to say on lots of different subjects. He's just taken up jiu-jitsu, so if you want to get onto that with him, he's been doing that for about a month, he told me the other day, and he's absolutely loving it. So thank you very much for those who have participated. We'll give it a few more seconds before we jump into the next part of the webinar. There we go. Numbers are flattening out a little bit, so if you do want to participate, jump in now. You'll have another opportunity to do this later if you don't want to. So cool. Right. We're going to end that poll. And we're going to move on. So just a very brief slide about FreeAgent for those of you that aren't familiar. So we are award-winning accounting software. We have unrivaled support. We have a very intuitive mobile app, which has won a bunch of awards within the marketplace. One mobile app for all the functionality within FreeAgent. We're particularly proud of our mobile app. And for any of you that aren't familiar, we are owned by the NatWest Group and have been for just shy of 6 years now. So if you want to take up FreeAgent, any of your clients or yourselves that have bank with NatWest, Royal Bank of Scotland, Ulster Bank, or Metal, then you can have a free version of the core product, and it's free for as long as you retain your account. Optional add-ons may be chargeable. We sit very much in the small business space. So over the years, we've evolved. We started life as a contractor product for the sort of one-man band, the freelancer. We evolved into the micro space, so there's sort of 2, 3, 5, 10 person businesses. And our next phase is to continue that evolution to just push that slightly further, so that we're really ticking all of the boxes for your small and micro needs. We're HMRC recognized, HMTD compatible. I'll whisper it, but we're ready to go for it. So when it lands, but we don't start talking about that just yet, because it's still 2024. If it lands, we shall see. Cool. On we go. So setting the scene. Why is strategy important? So we're talking about we're in campaign at the moment around the new tax year, and and exploring that opportunity between sort of January and an April time, when we finish the January push, and then we've got a month or two to really start to think, John, actually we've got maybe an opportunity for us to to look at what's going on in our business, and to understand how we can move that business forward, and how we can align on moving that business forward. So why is strategy important? So I did a bit of digging on this, because we kind of know it's important, but sometimes you need to find some proof. So I took this from Harvard Business Review. They asked 10,000 leaders, and 97% of those leaders surveyed cited strategy as the most important criteria for success in an organization. They also cited that 96% of them said that those surveyed, it was a different study, but cited that they lacked the required time for strategic thinking, which got me to thinking, well, why might that be the case? If we know that it's really important, but equally we also know that we really find it hard to really find the time and the headspace in order to be able to address this stuff. So why might that be? So I think, in accountancy, as in a lot of other industries, but particularly within the UK, that, busyness can often equal importance in our culture. It's a standard answer, isn't it? How's work going? Oh yeah, brilliant, but really, really busy. You don't very often go, yeah, really, really, really good, but I'm not very busy. just doesn't sound quite the same, does it? So yeah, I think we naturally and culturally align to to busyness being something that we're all have as part of our identity. In order to think strategically, you need to be able to sort of clear your mental space, be able to clear the decks, and really understand, right, okay, I've my alarm's not going off, my My notifications aren't pinging. I've written everything down that I need to do, so I'm not suddenly continuously distracted by this next item on my to-do list, and really be able to sit down and work out kind of, what is the North Star, where do we want to get to, and and how are we going to understand that. And I think I do a bit of it in my role in terms of strategy for my department, and sitting down and understanding what is it that we're trying to do, and then how are we actually going to go about this, because I think that strategy can be quite a sort of an ethereal concept, and actually having a process for it can really help to to actually move that process forward. When you just sat down with a blank piece of paper and asked to do a strategy, it can be very daunting. Well, I do think ultimately within our industry, particularly, we are very much at the mercy of statutory deadlines. So, a lot of the deadlines that we operate to in terms of filing for tax and filing for accounts and, all this kind of stuff, they're not our deadlines. They're deadlines that are set by, HMRC or Companies House or whoever it might be that's decreed that these things need to be done by this particular time, and then we get squeezed from the other side by clients and perhaps not providing us the information in quite the right format or quite the right completeness. So we are kind of at the mercy of the tides, really, and and it can be very difficult to put all that to kind of one side, particularly when we know that the outcomes of not making those filings can be quite detrimental to to people's bank balances and that kind of stuff. So there's a whole sort of bunch of different factors that play into the unique situation that we find ourselves in our industry. But we do know that strategy is important, and we do know that it's something that we really need to dedicate our time and our thoughts to. So I'm going to run the next poll, as I promised, while we get ready for the discussion. So this poll is not about getting in touch with FreeAgent. This is, why is the new tax year the best time to get clients onto new accounting software and to think about your strategy? So I'm going to launch that. And then while everybody gets the opportunity to dive in and ask that, I'm going to... Right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. So just while everybody has the opportunity, I am going to get the questions ready. We're trying a slightly different approach for better video output. So the first question, while that poll runs, and I'm going to start with you, Will, just because you are next to me on the screen. The first question that we're going to run with is, why is strategy important for an accountancy practice?
Okay, so just before I answer that, I think just for a bit of context here, I was out on the road running some events at the back end of last year that were very much about helping firms think about their objectives for their firm. And one of the first questions I asked in each of the sessions was kind of a show of hands of who had a strategy of some sort. Now, clearly we're not saying who's got a 50-page business plan, but who had some clarity around what it was they were trying to do over the next 12 months, 3 years. Now, I get it was in an open forum, and people are sometimes a bit reluctant to put their hand up. But across 4 events, it was less than 1%. So room full of accountants, between 30 and 60 accountants in each room, and at each event it was less than 1% that put their hand up and said, yeah, I've got some form of strategy. So for anybody that's sitting listening to this now and thinking, oh, I haven't got strategy, that's like not good. You're in the 99% majority of firms that, for whatever reason, haven't taken the time to kind of step back and say, you know what is it that I'm trying to achieve? And I think this is the point of why strategy is important. It's almost this idea of, like, what are we trying to do? If we were doing the right thing by clients, we'd sit down with a new client and say, what are you trying to achieve? What are you looking for out of your business? When do you want to retire? What do you want your business to look like in 3 years' time? How can we as accountants and bookkeepers help you do that? Yet we don't do it for our own firm. So I think I always use the analogy of it's a bit like going on holiday without deciding where you're going to go on holiday. It makes it a pretty tricky situation, doesn't it? That I'm
Yeah.
going to go on holiday. I don't quite know where. I'm just going to get in the car and go somewhere. Like you never get there.
It's a bit
And
like doctors as well, isn't it? Who, when they're sick, they won't go see another doctor. Like an accountant will
absolutely,
look at their own. Like we can
yeah,
give the advice. Do we ever listen to it?
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
we do. Obviously, that's why we're here. But
Of course. And I mean, the thing with a strategy is that it doesn't matter if where you get to doesn't look exactly like the strategy. So if you take the holiday analogy a bit further and you say, right, well, I'm in North Norfolk and I'm going to go on holiday to Edinburgh. I mean, I can make a plan about how I'm going to get to Edinburgh, but the A1 might be closed, and therefore I have to kind of take a diversion and take a different route. But knowing where I'm going to go means that I'm still going to get there. It might just not be in the way that I envisaged, and that's okay. Um, but we have to stop and we have to think about our firms. I'm sure we'll have a mix of people that are firm owners and people working for firms on the session today. Um, but we have to think about what is it that we want to deliver for our firm. What are the things that are important for us that we want out of our firm? We have to think about our accounting firm as a business. Often we think about our firms as practices, and I always kind of make the point that if we're practicing something, it's like, hang on a second, we can be better at this. So we have to think about businesses, and I know that when I first set my firm up, priority number one, I've got to pay the mortgage. So I've got to replace my employed income. But it's really difficult to never get out of that mindset in terms of actually what I'm not creating a job for myself here. I want to create a business that can, if I want it to, operate without me. And that takes a different mindset. And to do that, you've got to think about, well, what do I need to do? So what does 12 months look like? What does three years look like? And that doesn't necessarily mean revenue, but it's like your work-life balance and all these other things. So a long answer here to say, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So fundamentally, that's why strategy is really important.
I very much agree. That sort of North Star, and it leaches into everything, right? I was listening to Daniel Priestley on the Diary of a CEO podcast yesterday when I was driving back from Manchester, and he talked about this concept of like if you're not if you haven't got that vision and that passion, it part of that is then recruiting other people along to follow along in that vision and passion. He said it's very difficult to do that if you don't know where you're going. And that's a sort of a secondary type 2 recruitment kind of string to your bow, right? When you're trying to bring good people on, is being able to sell them the vision of where you're headed.
And on recruitment, that's a really valid point, because so often as accountants, we spend a lot of time thinking about our marketing message for winning clients. But when it comes to recruitment, we think about it as recruitment and not marketing. But it's the same thing, because we're in a finite pool of people in a local area where we've got local competition, all wanting the same people. So what's our USP when it comes to kind of recruiting staff? And you're absolutely right on this kind of vision piece, and I think it's a bit before that, which is purpose and understanding. Look, why do we do what we do? And when I work with firms, I try and help them think through the process of, firstly, why do I get out of bed in the morning? Why do I do what I do? What is it I do, and how do I do it? And the big challenge is normally shifting people from the how to the what. Because when you say to people, what do you do? They say, well, I prepare accounts and I do tax returns and I do bookkeeping. That's kind of the how. So what you've got to do is work out what's the bit that you do for your clients. And often that's making sure they can sleep at night, and making sure that they don't have to worry about HMRC knocking on their door.
Yeah.
That's the what we do. The how we do it is we make sure that we file your accounts promptly and we're here when you need us, and it's thinking about that as a proposition. But that's kind of almost step one of the strategy, is like, why do we do what we do? What if somebody says to me, why did you set up your own accounting firm? Why did you set up your own bookkeeping firm? We need to be able to say, I did it because of this. And what I do for my clients is this, and this is how we do it. And you create from that a really succinct marketing message. And I always say it's easy to grow an accounting firm. It's much harder to scale. And the growth bit is having a really good message and communicating it effectively.
And if all else fails, you just have a pub in your office, Will, and that gets people through the door, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nick, your thoughts on that question? Why is it important for an accountancy practice? Why is strategy important for an accountancy practice? Sorry.
Yeah, I nothing really to add to that. I do agree with Will's point wholeheartedly. Like, you need to know where you want to be, where you can think about your feet. I would say as well, like, when you're talking about like getting the staff, and the right staff is critical. Like, it's how you set yourself out. I know, like, going back a while ago, there was a job offer, and I sat there in the interview and said, all right, okay, so what's your technology situation like? And like, what do you mean? It's like, okay, well, what computers are you using? What setup do you have? And it's just like, it's single monitors, it's some old desktops, there's no real infrastructure. You're clearly not thinking about the wider sense of like making the work better to be able to service better. And that goes into it. Like, it's very much, oh, I've got a computer because I need computer. You're not thinking about, okay, well, what's my wider strategy to get people engaged, to get people working, to think about, okay, how can I service these clients, stuff like that. It gets a little bit esoteric, like, of like how you do things and how you run as a business. But I do think it's quite critical, and getting staff is key, because we're at the situation now where with a lot more remote work, people, they can get London wages but not live in London. Like, how do you compete with that? I'm sure it's maybe a bit different in Norwich, where it's a quicker train, but
Yeah,
it's still a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, you got Stranger's Coffee in Norwich. That's probably like the best coffee bean place that I know. So,
well, there you go. We've got our advantages.
So we'll move on to the next question. So why? I'm going to start with you on this one, Nick. Why do firms find it hard to shift from the day-to-day tasks, like the doing, to strategic thinking? And is this a good time of year to do it? So this break between January and April.
Institutionalization. Yeah. We get institutionalized. This is the way we've always done it.
Yes, yeah.
And it breaks people. It breaks that ability to think about, okay, so you have two things. I do my job. This is how I do my job. I've always done my job this way, and that's it. You end up with no thought about changing it, about improving it, about getting better processes, whether that's for better recoveries, making the job easier. For example, just things like, do you remember how we used to analyze banks? You could be writing out a bank statement onto a spreadsheet to try and reconcile it. Okay, well, now we get products that can scan it in and they're accurate. And you still see the odd people like writing it out. It's like, okay, you need to think, just because it was done this way. And certainly with like handing over a job where it passes to the trainee from the previous person, where they were taught by somebody else who's taught by somebody else. No one looks at a job. So I do think that's part of it. I do think as well, different areas in our fields work differently. I'd say like, whenever I encounter tax people tend to not be the most tech savvy. Their brains are wired up differently when it comes to the work. So thinking about something like MTD, and certainly MTD for it, well, they're not going to be thinking, because it's just another compliance thing that they've got to deal with. They're not going to be thinking about the wider strategy. So I would sit there and look and go, okay, well, it's coming. We're going to have to deal with it. There's a lot of stuff where we do like year-end work, which is pretty much year-end bookkeeping as well as doing the compliance side, because we get stuff in. How do we make that better? What can we offer inside it, and how do we improve it and make it easier for people?
Mm.
And getting it in this time of year. So what I would be doing is that I'd be looking at September, October to try identify the clients to book in the training. So once you've gone past that end of November, December, January peak busy time, they can have a couple of weeks off, go to Center Parks or whatever, and come back and then implement it and do the training and ease it in. So you're ready to start running from April.
Cool.
And it is that difficult. And again, it goes back to strategy. If you're not looking, okay, I need to start looking at my clients who I need to move over 6-9 months in advance, maybe even a year, because then you've got to segment them, you've got to look at them, you've got to look at the difficulty of the clients. Like, okay, well, here's like, so we're from the East Midlands, it's very rural. I need to look and say, okay, are these 60-year-old farmers who don't use a computer? They're very good at what they do, but these are going to be problem people to move on to this compliance. And you've got to develop that early to be able to get it in now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're gonna be thinking about this before the window rather than during the window. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw the question over to you, Will. So why do firms find it hard to shift from day-to-day tasks to this sort of more strategic, longer term vision-based thinking? And is this a good time of year to be doing it?
Yeah, I mean, any time of the year is a good time to be doing it, but this is a historically good time to do it because we've just got over January. Everybody would have half killed themselves in January. We've got like a brief pause before we start again in April. So historically, it's been a period of time where in theory we should have a bit more capacity. But any time is a good time. So if for whatever reason you can't do it in the next 4 weeks before you start again, then find a time. The argument is for not doing stuff is always we're just too busy. We haven't got enough time. Let me make it very clear, you will never have enough time. So the only way you will get things done is when you prioritize, because the problem isn't a lack of time, it's a lack of prioritization. So what we have to do is identify the things that are really important and prioritize and treat it like a project, allocate the resources that it needs, whether that's your resource or a team's resource, to be able to deliver the things that you need to do, and having clarity around what it is you want to do for the next 12 months, 36 months is going to have a massive impact on your business. And as I said right at the beginning, you don't have to write a strategy document for this. We operate in our business on a strategy on a page. So we have a 1-page strategy. With a lot of the firms I work with, we kind of think through a process and we come up with maybe 10 actions that are things that people want to deliver by the end of the 12-month period. And often you don't have to revisit those things. Just by going through a process of getting them out of your head and articulating them is enough to kind of embed them in the things that you need to do. So often we'll do that in March or whatever. We'll come back to it next March. We'll pull out the list and say, how did you do? Oh, well, it's a miracle. You've kind of done all 10 without actually physically going back to those things, but going through the process of thinking about what it is you want to do is going to make it a really valuable process for you. And I think it's about mindset, and we genuinely kind of care about our clients. So our focus is always, I've got to deliver for my client.
Yes.
But we've got to take a longer term view and say that actually, well, if we stop and think about what we're doing and how we're doing it, we can actually improve what we do for clients. So when we talk about change and the challenges of changing anything in a firm, and for those of you that are here and you've got team members, it's like you've got to position change around the benefits of the client, because the one common denominator in every accounting and bookkeeping firm is everyone cares about clients. So if we want to get people on board with doing something different, we've got to position change around this is the benefit to the client. So people will come along with that change because they want to do better by the client.
I like the idea that your strategy doesn't need to be a 100-page doc, and it doesn't need to be kind of, really sort of in depth, and like the output at least doesn't need to be, like tons of pages and stuff. I very much, I know that I'm somebody that is much more of a thinker and an ideas person than I am a natural actioner. And as a result of that, I use something that I like to call the power of future conversations. And that is essentially to say, I'm going to talk to you about this thing at this time, specifically on this particular date, in this particular calendar slot that I've put in. And I know that that will focus myself to say, right, if I've got to present my strategy to my, my peers or my boss or whoever it might be, that I'm going to do it before that day because I put it in the calendar, and it's far greater for me to suffer the embarrassment of having to cancel that meeting because I haven't done it than it is for me to put it in. So I always recommend that as a little tip to think, if it doesn't need to be, your strategy doesn't need to be the final strategy, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be really where you want to end up in 10 years, but for the next 12 to 24 months, where are you aiming? What are those steps along the way, right? And building it into your calendar so that it's each season we go back and we refresh that, and we all kind of buy into it, definitely helps to move those conversations along. And just putting it in the diary and saying, look, I'm going to present this to the team on this particular date, you're far more likely to get it done than if you just say, oh, I'll present some form of strategy at some point in the future and you never get around to it. So yes, very much agree. Excellent points, gentlemen. The next question. So what are the cornerstone elements of creating and delivering a digital strategy? So we're focusing, we're starting to go down the funnel a little bit and narrow this down slightly more towards the digital, the technology element of what we're doing. Both of you well versed in this stuff, having been involved in it for many years. Will, it's your turn to start. Your thoughts on the cornerstones of creating and delivering a digital strategy within your firm for anyone that's listening that might be thinking about this.
Yeah, sorry if this sounds repetitive, but you can't even start to think about what your digital strategy is until you've got your overarching strategy.
Yep, totally agree.
So step one is like, what is it we're trying to achieve? What do we want to do for clients, and what's the output we want for clients? Because it's almost a case of, in an ideal situation, and you talked about it, Tony, earlier, that and I think Nick did as well, this idea that we do things the way we've always done it. So whilst we will continue to do things the way we've always done it, there's very little drive or incentive for us to kind of think differently. So it's almost like if you were redesigning your accounting or bookkeeping firm today, if you were starting with a blank sheet of paper, what would it look like? And what this means is you don't have to change everything straight away, but take the time to say, well, actually, what do I want to deliver for clients? In an ideal world, if there were no limits, no restrictions, how would I do it? How would I price? How would I deliver the service? What technology would I use? Would I be doing bookkeeping for everybody? And start with that view of, if your practice was the ideal practice, what would it look like? Because what you can do on day one, having done that, is start to deliver that for every new client that walks through the door. And then over time, you can start to kind of rethink some of the other things, the legacy stuff that you've got in your business. Unless you're starting a new firm today, you will always have legacy. When I was building my firm in the early few years, everyone said, yeah, it's easy for you, Will, because you've got no legacy clients on desktop. And
I
it's
think we've still got one or two people on Key Prime, so
yeah, that's it. And
for the real heads.
And actually, there will always be legacy. Everybody will always have some legacy unless you're starting from scratch. And we did have people that we moved, and while most people were moving desktop to cloud, we were doing 600 clients from one cloud solution to another cloud solution. So it's like we had those challenges as well. But everybody should be thinking about digital processes, and when we talk about digital disruption, the way that I talk about this is that what we're trying to do when we talk about being digital, and the best definition I ever heard anybody use of kind of this idea of digital disruption, is it's about removing friction from the process. So what we're saying here is, where can we use technology to remove all of those points of friction that we have with a client? So where is the stuff that just gets in the way and is clunky, and how can we use technology to remove some of those areas of friction? And when we think about digital, it's more than just using cloud accounting tools. It's actually thinking about kind of the end-to-end, the way that we blend technology with people and process, because it's no good having really good digital technology, but you still keep your antiquated paper-based processes that you used to have, and you try and make stuff fit. You try and make your old processes fit new technology, because actually what you're doing there is you're just magnifying the inefficiencies that already exist, which
You're
is why
using
you've got to do this white paper
using a
exercise.
less fit for purpose product than the one that was there before, because that system worked with the old.
Exactly.
We used to talk about it all the time of like, you can't just rip the green out and throw the blue in and expect everything to just work better, because that's just one bit of the digital process. That's not a digitalized client base, right? So I really like that idea of sort of, how does this work? What are the problems, or as you called them, Will, in more eloquently, friction points? And and how can we smooth out some of those friction points? I think that's an excellent way to think about it. Start from scratch. What would this look like? How can we move towards that bit by bit? I'm always an advocate of try and take the steps. Don't just try and jump straight to the end game. You don't need 40 new apps. That's not a digital strategy. You need to get 2 or 3 apps really well implemented, the bedrock, your bookkeeping tools, your data collection tools, maybe your reporting tools, and then build from there. Don't just try and jump straight to the end game, because it will be harder and you'll come up against failure to implement. Nick, your thoughts on this cornerstone elements of creating and delivering a digital strategy? We'll say we've got the overall firm strategies in place and we're happy with that.
I'd say one of the cornerstones is know the skill level of your team. It's critical, because you, as you say, you start where do you want to be, then you find the processes to get there. If you don't know your team's skill levels, you might not be taking them with you. You might be losing them, and they could be very good people. It's just everyone works a bit differently. Everyone's wired up a bit differently. But without knowing your team, it's not going to happen. It's going to fall apart, because people will just do things their way. They won't follow on, and you'll get breaks and disruptions and things like that all along the way.
I remember, sorry, that's not true. I lost count of the amount of times that I would walk into a practice when I was an implementer, and we'd get the opening spiel from the partner about how kind of everyone was on the bus and on this journey. And then the partner would leave for me to do the training, and I would say to everybody, right, so we're going to go around the room, you're going to tell me your name, and you're going to tell me kind of how much you use the platform day to day. And the first couple of people would say, yeah, a little bit, I use it here and there. And then the first brave person would go, I don't use it at all, I've never used it, I've logged in once, and that was the end of it. And then everybody else following that would say the same thing as they went around the room. So and I've lost count of the amount of times that happened. So yeah, knowing and being realistic and pragmatic about like your team and what you're working with is super important. And it leads us on to the next question, actually, which is how can you get the team on board with this stuff, whether it be strategy or it be digitalization strategy? What are the things that have worked for you? Nick, we'll kick off with you on this question this time.
Right. So I always take like my team members, like their health, their mental health, their stress levels, priorities. That is like my first key concern when ever doing anything of this, because I know how much work they've got on. So when I need them to get on board, I am going to be breaking something. I'm going to be breaking a process. I'm going to be breaking their jobs. I'm giving them additional work. Okay, down the line, it's going to free them all up, but I need to show them that. So what I would tend to do whenever I want to bring in a new product, a new thing, I will take a big one, get some synergy going, but Sift. We've rolled out Sift as our reporting tool to the whole firm. And what I did was that I spent ages working with people, doing their work on the management accounts to do the setup, and then go through and the training with them to show them how easy it was. So you pick certain key people who you know, people who people respect to that. They could be senior, they could be semi-senior, whatever. Knowing those right people, doing it, and then saying, okay, well, this is how easy it is now. We are getting to, month 2 or quarter 2, whatever it is afterwards. Now you're doing it, see how much less work you're doing. Same as when we were initially, we're quite a big Xero partner. Platinum partner is one of our main ones. Again, it was going from those old Excel manual records to then going, okay, well, now we've got the bank feeds. Maybe it's a bit bad because it was the old Yodlee feeds and they never quite work right, but whatever. Let's go with the dream now. We've got open banking.
Yes, we have.
Okay, so now we're doing it. Now we're scanning it. Now here's Dext, here's this. And it's actually, to do it, you can't just sit people down and say, all right, this is Tony from FreeAgent. He's going to tell you how brilliant FreeAgent is, and then we're going to come back to it in 2 months. Doesn't work, falls flat. You've constantly got to be engaging with the team. Like we set up groups to say, okay, these are the, so with Sift, we set up, these are the clients you're going to be running it on. I want reports every month. I want you to come to me when you've got issues. I'd spent 2 years testing it before rolling it out. And then it's always that I always like to think of my team first. Like I have a team that sits under me who's a champion in every office, and they've all got different skills and they're all at different levels. And it's making sure that you are able to then listen to them and say, okay, this won't work at X office because this is what our client base is like. Okay, so this doesn't quite work, but where can we slot it in? Where can you get skilled, or do you need to focus elsewhere? That is the critical bit. And once you can do that, once you can get that sell and you can see the work, it becomes foundational to it. And then you can go for the next wider step to say that, okay, these core people, they're all doing it. This is going to be the wide step. You've now got a well-trained base to be able to cover it. We're going to start with the trainees. Then new ones coming in, they don't know any better. They are like, they're sponges. They can sink it all in. Let's get them going through these processes. So as people age out, become managers, they're not doing the work so much. It doesn't quite matter as long as they know the product exists, but you're getting that new generation in. And then you're actually making their jobs better and a healthier job environment.
So to summarize that, we're looking at things like knowing your individuals, what their skills are, and make sure that you're giving them the right types of involvement. Identify we call them champions, team, right? So someone a champion in each office, and starting from the bedrock and show, don't tell, right? This is
Absolutely.
the tool. This is what we're going to be doing on it. This is what I expect to see the output of. I'm going to hold your hand. We're going to get there, but I'm not just going to wheel Tony in and say, here's a tool for half a day, and then that's going to be the end of it. It's never a one and done. What was it Russell Frayne said to me? It was a living, breathing thing. It's alive. It's not just one and done, and that's the end of it.
I've never encountered a product that's quite one and done.
No, absolutely not. Will, your thoughts as we approach towards the end of the session? Believe it or not, guys, how do you get your team on board with this strategy?
So first of all, it's involvement. So we've got to get the team involved in the process. We've got to listen. We've got to take their feedback. Have them involved in developing the strategy. What does it look like? And again, when it comes to the implementation and change, going back to the point I made earlier, everyone cares about clients. So everything we do in our firm should be focused on the client. If it's not, then why bother? It's like, why, if we're genuinely about delivering the best we can for clients, and there isn't a direct or indirect benefit on the client of anything that we do in running an accounting or bookkeeping firm, then don't bother doing it, because it doesn't serve our end game, which is deliver the best possible experiences that we can. So making sure that everybody understands, what does this bit of the strategy do for the client, and of course for the team. So in my latest book, The Human Firm, I talk about a firm being kind of two halves. The top half is all about the client, the bottom half is all about the internal team, and how do we meet those sometimes conflicting kind of requirements between the client and the team, but all of that is driven from a really clear purpose, real clarity around what you're delivering for the client, and then recognizing the discrete critical elements for both your external clients and your internal team members. So getting the whole thing kind of all singing, dancing, and pulling in the same direction, and that happens by everybody understanding and being really clear on purpose, vision, and values in an organization,
and then having their involvement in it as well. Like you say, I think that people are always more engaged with things that they're involved with. Just it being sat on a piece of paper on your laptop somewhere is not getting people on the bus, right? So Excellent. So we come to our final question, and we've got 10 minutes left, and then a couple of other bits for me to cover before we jump on to the demo. But the final question is, how should we be thinking about the role of technology in shaping your firm's strategy? I mean, we kind of have covered this off through all of the sessions, but just any final thoughts on this? The reason we ask it is because the next webinar that we're doing in this series in March is kind of more focused around the technology side of this sort of stuff. So Will, we started with you. We're going to end with you. Any thoughts on, just very quickly, how we should be thinking about, the role of technology shaping your firm's strategy?
Yeah, there's been a couple of announcements in the last day or two with new AI developments being launched by vendors in the space. I'm sure they're not going to be on their own. So AI is going to continue to create opportunities for us as accountants and bookkeepers that ultimately are going to give us the opportunity to free up time to do the things that clients really care about. Tony, you know my take on adoption across the market. I still don't believe we're more than 20% adoption of firms using cloud accounting tools effectively. Which means that anybody that is doing this stuff now is in the top quartile of firms in the UK. So, like, if I talk to firms and they're talking about doing stuff now, and they're saying, "Oh, we're so far behind." Still early adopters. It's astonishing that 15 years after we started doing this stuff, I'm still talking to firms now who are starting the journey, and I'm saying, hey, you're an early adopter. You have a massive profit opportunity because you're doing stuff that the majority are still not doing. So use technology, harness technology, but as I said earlier, you've got to blend this with people and process. You've got to build the right processes that underpin the technology that's available, and you've got to get the right people understanding where they fit and doing the bits that are relevant to them within that process, using that technology, and be open-minded to what new technology can do in terms of enhancing how you work and ultimately what you deliver to clients.
I couldn't agree more. I always sort of talk about this idea of, it's very easy as a, as an accountant, you're bombarded, or a bookkeeper, you're bombarded with technology, right? It's everywhere you look, it's everywhere you turn, it's every time you pick the phone up, someone's trying to flog you something, right? And it can be very easy to get excited about these things and think, oh, that's absolutely fantastic, that's brilliant, and end up sort of reverse engineering a situation where you've got a solution that's looking for a problem. I remember this conversation I had with a quite a prominent character in our industry, and she said to me with pride that her 4-person firm used over 60 bits of technology, 60 pieces of software. And I was questioned as to whether that was all fully implemented and, really purring as a system. And I'm convinced to this day that it wasn't. But, you've got to make sure that your problems, your strategy, your problems, your friction points, they are there, and the technology should augment that. It should be part of building those solutions. Don't start with the tech and try and reverse engineer, a problem where there isn't one, right? Or there's an opportunity where there isn't one. Nick,
quite interesting
go
that Will was saying about like the early adopters. So just remember having a conversation with somebody. They qualified in 1986 and said, "Well, back in my day, we didn't have computers." I'm like, "Well, Lotus 123 was released in 1983, so you definitely had spreadsheets, mate. Like Excel was 87." So, I'm like, probably one of my favorite films is Terminator, so you'll forgive me if I'm not on the AI hype train like you two guys are. Especially with what we what we know about like how bad the models are and stuff like that. It's all breaking down. Technology is a tool, and it's one I do think that we need to be embracing and cautiously. And I also think that we need to be asking more of our software providers. I'm not going to name names because it's probably a little bit gauche in a branded webinar. But there are some very good software providers who listen, who make changes. We'll say that FreeAgent is one of them who do that. But there are others who are just not providing an adequate experience for bookkeepers, accountants, and advisors in 2024 at all. And I do think that's a big part of it. You can't just be buying bits of software, bolting it on with like stickers and a bit of glue and hoping something's going to work. It has to work for the industry. I appreciate there isn't a one size fits all solution, but there are ones who are good, ones who are bad. And being able to do that and work that and to work in those good processes is critical for us, and we do need to make it a part of it. Really, really do. You can't just be sitting on your thumbs twiddling and hoping that compliance is going to go away. And also, if you're not picking up your speeds or you're not improving your office environment, you're going to lose time and recovery as a business owner, and you're going to lose good staff because they're going to go for a better working environment, and that's going to affect you as well. So,
Indeed.
yeah,
Gents, we're going to wrap up the questions just there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and reshare my screen. Right then, hasn't worked again. Why has that not worked? Bear with me a second. Right, while I do that, I'm going to run another poll. And that is for, if you would like to, again, if you were like somebody from FreeAgent to get in touch, then do go about that. Just bear with me a sec. Right, let's close that screen. Right, that's the poll. While the poll runs, a couple of bits and pieces. I will skim over the Q&As in a second, but I don't think we're going to have time for a full-blown one. I just want to take a moment to mention this. So one of the many hats that Will Farnell with us today wears is his role in Pro Nation, which is a community for accountants and bookkeepers. And what ProNation are doing, they very kindly agreed to partner with FreeAgent and put on a community for our user base. So our community is the FreeAgent Accountants and Bookkeepers community, hosted on Facebook. Stephen, if you could pop the link in the chat. It is for bronze partners and above. It is completely free, hosted by Will and his colleagues Martin Bissett and Lucy Cohen, all extremely learned within our industry. As I said, it's our gift to you for FreeAgent bronze partners and above. Jump on. It's just kicking off at the moment. You haven't missed anything yet. We're just gearing up to the first meeting of them, which will be in March. So it's just a good opportunity for us to just give that a plug. The Q&As, I'm just going to have a quick skim over them just to see if there's anything in here. I'm interested in strategy rather than technology. Which are focused on developing strategy rather than technology. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. So one CPD point for anyone that's interested. Yes, there will be a recording of the webinar. So with Joanne, your point about terms of engagement, AML, that kind of stuff. There's a couple of things out there. Check out Firm Check, run by a former FreeAgenter in the UK, Kevin Lord. And then there's a bunch of questions, one mentioning there, when are FreeAgent linking with Client Engager for CRM? So we are talking to them. Give them a nudge, tell them you'd like it, Adrian, and we will continue to work with them to try and make that happen as soon as we possibly can, because that's one we would like to integrate with, amongst others. We're doing a lot of work on our APIs and integrations. You'll have noticed there's a big bunch of Dext updates. Nick mentioned Sift earlier in the webinar as well.
Big fan of Sift.
Yeah, we integrate with Sift. So if you are a Sift analytics
Hey,
user,
Tony, who's that big box reseller that you integrate with now?
Who's the what? Sorry,
the big box reseller, Amazon.
Oh yes, we also integrate with Amazon as well,
Yeah.
and yeah, a bunch of other stuff. So go check that out. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in that space.
I will say, and they haven't paid me to say this, and if they do want to send me some goodies afterwards, with Amazon sellers, if you are dealing with them, I've used many different products, different services. The FreeAgent one, very good, very easy to use. Could be a good one for your clients.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah.
Very much appreciated. The feedback we've had has been, we hoped it would be good, but it's been better than good. We've been delighted with the feedback we've had from it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to draw to a close our main session. Oh, jeez, sorry. Draw to close our main session now. I've got one of those like magic mouses and it's so sensitive. I want to say a big thank you to our panelists, Will and Nick. Incredibly insightful, loads of good stuff for people to think about. One of the comments that came through from Linda Owen was, these are really useful sessions to help me get out of the day to day and get me thinking about this kind of stuff. And that's exactly what we want. So huge thank you to our panelists. Incredibly insightful. Huge thank you to everybody behind the scenes, Georgia and the team, Marianne, who make these webinars possible. There is a huge amount of work that goes into promoting them and making sure that they run smoothly and that everything gets followed up. The really cool illustrations and designs that we have from the design team to be able to sort of build out the slides and then I guess the biggest thank you is to everybody that turned up and listened. The vast majority of you have stuck through right to the end of the main webinar, so much appreciated. And,
thank you, Ian. Just before I go,
yeah,
there you go. There we got the Saturn V as well, ISS Optimus.
oh dear. If anyone's into, is it Lego?
Yeah.
Nathan Keeley is anyone that's familiar with Nathan, he is a massive Lego head. So anyone that wants to get stuck into Lego conversations, go hunt out Nathan Keeley of Carpenter Box and Summer fame. So panelists, you're welcome to drop off now. For those of you that would like to stick around to see 5-10 minutes of FreeAgent, you're more than welcome to. And I will be taking us through that now. So thanks ever so much, Will.
Thanks Tony.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Right then, hopefully for those of you that are still here, if someone could just pop in the chat box that they can still see my screen and that they can see the FreeAgent dashboard now, that would be much appreciated. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Samantha. So we're just going to, in 5 or 10 minutes, just have a quick look at FreeAgent. So when we log in, this nice green stripe across the top, this means we're in the accounting dashboard area of FreeAgent. So this is just where we're able to kind of manage our clients from. You'll also be able to see here whether it is a free NatWest license or whether it's not. A bunch of kind of interesting stuff along here, alerts. You can manage your different permissions and view reports and bits and pieces for the practice. And this is where you'd like access our learning and accreditation and also our partner resources as well. I'm going to jump straight into a FreeAgent license and just give you a quick look and feel. So this is the overview screen. I'm often referred to as the dashboard, but it is the overview screen. These nice little widgets that we've got here that show, kind of banking, our P&L and, what's been going on in the business from a profit perspective for the current year. And then also for, the prior years, the brought forward. That's that number there, that carried forward. That is the how much money have I got to spend on a Range Rover number. And then obviously we've got sort of, keeps track of our invoices, our estimates, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got the tax timeline, which is a FreeAgent feature that people generally really like. It's had a bunch of updates to it recently, which allows you to, to jump into these different tax events and to mark them as paid if they're or filed if they've already been filed, and you can filter them down and stuff now. So that's really useful. So what we're going to do is we are going to jump into the banking section first, and we just have a quick look around banking and explain how some of this works. So we've got various different bank accounts here that we can interact with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind back. So you'll notice this is our bank feeds connection screen. I'm just going to pull up here. You'll notice here there's all these different banks that we connect with under the open banking platform. Very worth mentioning that we built our own open banking platform. So this platform connects open banking bank feed to FreeAgent, and it does it via something that we built. Not common among our peers who've used third parties to do this stuff. But you'll notice we've got Metro Bank and American Express, which were the two recent ones that we added to the list. You also notice we've got Starling, Revolut, Monzo, who are built under a different platform, not open banking. But yeah, we're the first to market with an open banking Metro Bank feed. I'm sure a couple of you might go, oh, I've seen one in other providers. It's not an open banking feed. I've seen it paraded as an open banking feed incorrectly, but we are the first. We helped Metro Bank in order to get that stuff built, so quite proud of that. Various different sort of transactional types we've got in here. So we've got the green transactions, which is something that FreeAgent has had explained already. You can see here we've got a bill payment, and we've matched that bill payment up with the appropriate bill, so it's now not showing as owing, and and that amount has been explained to the various nominal codes. We've got some red ones in here, which is FreeAgent doesn't know what that is yet. So you'll notice here it's had a stab, but I haven't said yes, that's correct. So it's it's still sitting there as red. We have purple ones. Purple ones are manually added. Now, anybody that's used cloud accounting before and had a client that's used cloud accounting has probably had clients add transactions manually. So this just allows you to kind of filter them out. But worth a mention as well. So we sort of touched on it, but didn't go into a huge amounts of detail around artificial intelligence. But FreeAgent has a tool built into it called Guess. And you'll notice there we've got Guess rules, which allows you to sort of program Guess to some extent. Guess is a phenomenal tool, and it kind of does two things. So the first thing that it does is it looks at how you have categorized things in FreeAgent over time. And it says, right, okay, so if you put, ZZs to accommodation and meals, and you did that again, you did that again, you did that again, it goes, right, that is what that's what Jim does with with that transaction. So I'm going to start doing that for him, and then over time you can change it if you want to, retrain the algorithm in order to push it to a different place. What it also does as well is it looks at, so when you first load up to FreeAgent, it'll look at the transactions that are there, and it looks at how other FreeAgent users have treated those transactions in the past. And what that means is that on day one, 65% of your transactions on average will be coded automatically for you by FreeAgent. Now, over time, that number drops down to steadies out at about 60% over time. And that's with a 93% accuracy. So FreeAgent is really, really geared up to help with the heavy lifting. It really works well. We're really proud of the accuracy rate, and that artificial intelligence has been programmed into FreeAgent since 2020. We're a modest bunch at FreeAgent, but we have been quietly leading the charge in that space for some time. We're helping to shape the learned individuals in FreeAgent, helping to shape the bank's strategy and direction towards artificial intelligence as well. So it's really exciting. We'll continue to use it, tactfully and tastefully in FreeAgent, and it's just embedded in there. It just works, and that's the best kind of artificial intelligence, is stuff that just works, right? So that will help with that. You'll see them all come through as orange and sat for approval, and you'll be able to say, yes, I'm happy with those, or no, I'd like to change them if in the 7% of cases they're not in the right place. I'm just going to jump through into the files section as well now. So we had excuse me. We've had a tool within FreeAgent now. It got rebranded about September, October time last year, called Smart Capture. And Smart Capture will allow you to, you'll be able to see here, it pulls through, you take a photo on the mobile app, and then it pulls out the amount and it pulls out the date. And then what it allows you to do is convert it to an expense. If it can see a transaction within the bank that matches up that amount 2 days either side of it and matches up to the correct amount, then it will automatically pull that transaction in and attach the receipt onto that transaction within the bank as well. And it automatically categorizes it based on data that's pulling out of the receipt as well, where it can. Really, really neat, really useful for your clients. We've had great uptake of Smart Capture, and it continues to move in the right direction. It becomes a paid-for add-on with FreeAgent if you use it more than 10 times a month. But we've had a really good uptake of that as well, because people are really getting stuck into using it and had a really good experience. So hopefully that just gives you a nice kind of look and feel. And in terms of who FreeAgent's suitable for, we're stretching our suitability, and we're doing it very successfully. We started life as a contractor and freelancer product, brilliant for that still. We're really focusing on the practices side of things. We've got some really cool stuff coming. So if any of you are able to get along to our road shows, you'll see a bunch of the new stuff that we've got kind of on the boards in the road shows over the course of March. Very much practice focused. And then what we're finding is that, you know, as we're growing the product, that you know, then it was kind of micros, and now it's, you know, small. So, you know, the one-man band, the micros, and the small businesses as well. And, you know, and with that extra focus on the practice functionality, we're really starting to see some really good traction within the marketplace. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to run the final poll. So thank you to the near 100 of you that have stayed on all the way through to the end. And this is your final opportunity now to say, yes, I would really like somebody from FreeAgent to get in touch on this webinar. So if you would like somebody to get in touch, please put yes, and we will make sure that the right people from FreeAgent get in touch with you. Obviously, there's no obligation. It's just to make sure that you've got the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody at FreeAgent and make sure that we're able to, you know, show you how it works, talk through how it will work for your practice, your client base, and provide you with all the resources to make an informed decision as to whether or not you'd like to partner with FreeAgent. No cost to partnering with FreeAgent. It's only when you start to add licenses that are not NatWest based that there's a cost that starts to come in. So, as I said, no obligation. I'll leave that running for another 30 seconds or so, and then we shall finish the webinar. Yeah, if you enjoyed today, sling a comment in the chat. We really appreciate it. Our guests were brilliant today. I'm a big fan of Will's. I've known Will for getting on 10 years now. I was part of his part of the team that worked with him to migrate his client base onto cloud, or from cloud to cloud back in the day. So yeah, Will and I have known each other for some time. So yeah, I thought it was a brilliant session, really insightful from Will as ever. And this stuff, the strategy stuff, often, you know, kind of falls by the wayside. So yeah, thank you ever so much, everybody, for tuning in. And I'll just let that run for a few more seconds now, and then we'll call time. Brilliant. You're welcome, Zishan. Much appreciated. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I think we are at time now. There's the numbers have stopped, so I will end the poll. Thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you very much, Serdar. Brilliant. Thank you very much, folks. There's no polite way to end a Zoom, so I shall call time there.